Over the next couple weeks, we're entering into a new kind of very short preaching series called Life Explored. It's just for 4 weeks, and during this series, we're looking at some of the big questions of life. Things that we're all wrestling with, either we're voicing them or not. We are all dealing with certain questions in life. And one of the biggest questions I think that a lot of us are dealing with is, where do we find lasting happiness? And if we think about our lives, and I think about my life and your life, all of us have these kind of little gods, small g, that promise us so much happiness, yet can deliver so little to us. And so, it's sometimes said that what we desire in life determines our disposition, our decisions, and ultimately our destinies. So basically what that means is, if I desire, whatever it is I desire most in life, and if I want that so badly, it changes my disposition, how I view life, how I approach things in life. It impacts my decisions and ultimately then impacts my destiny in life. So that question of where does lasting happiness come from is a really important question. Often we fill our lives with all kinds of things we would say are if-onlys, I'll call them this morning. If only I have this one thing, it will make my life complete. I'll be happy finally at the very end of the day. What's your if-only in life? We all come from different walks of life. You came in here this morning, and there's different experiences we all have. But if you think about it, what is your if only that says, if I have this, if this happens in my life, I will finally be happy? Now I'm going to show you a short video. It's a funny video because this is kind of a heavy topic, right? But at the same time, it's a good topic. We're going to just watch a short video. So hit it, John. And some of you know our BBS. Hit it, John. And he's going to show us a short little video. Okay, so it's just funny, right? Maybe, right? Maybe some of us it's not so funny. That's what we really want is this green grass. So the man's obviously gets hooked on a late night infomercial and feels like he's gonna have the perfect lawn. And so, obviously his life though turns upside down when his neighbor has bigger, better tools, more skills, and more time. So maybe you want the perfect green grass. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's something else in your life. What is your if only? Say, if only I have this, what is it that you are chasing? The passage you're looking at today is from Matthew chapter 11, and it gets us really to the heart of Christianity and helps us understand this question. What is it that's going to make us ultimately happy in life? And so go ahead and turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 11. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at this morning. Matthew 11, 25 to 30 can be found on page 476, the Bible that's right in front of you. Matthew 11, 25 to 30, I'll read this few verses for us. At that time, Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. It's this famous invitation from Jesus right here in Matthew chapter 11, with this promise that Jesus gives to those that will follow him of deep inner rest of the soul. Now obviously we need physical rest, but the physical rest is not what Jesus is referring to here. The rest that Jesus is inviting us into is this rest of the soul that says that I can finally be satisfied and just secure in my life. And finding that rest that Jesus offers here is going to liberate us from finding a bunch of things that are just if-onlys in our life. So what I want to do this morning is I just want to share 3 things from this text about where do we find rest. If our life is filled with these if-onlys, where do we actually find rest from? Those 3 things are these things. There's our need for rest, what rest is, and how do we get it. What rest is, how do we get it, and our need for it. So I just want to share a few things with you from this text here that have been helpful to me this week as I've dealt with my own restlessness of my soul. The first one is in verse 28. So look at verse 28, the Bible in front of you. Jesus says this, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. All of us need rest because all of us are restless. So when Jesus says here in the passage, he says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, he's not separating out some people who have burdens and are heavy laden and some people who don't. It is an all-encompassing invitation for everyone who's ever lived, ever will live, who lives now, who says, you have burdens, you are heavy laden, carrying on through life, and come to me and I will give you rest. Now that burden and those heavy laden things that Jesus is talking about here looks differently for different stages of life. Some of us are younger, we have different type of burdens. Some of us are older, we have different type of burdens that we carry through life. But the reality is, all of us are walking through life burdened and heavy laden. The combination that Jesus has here of this, burdens and heavy laden is really referring to the inner unrest that every single one of us experiences in life. We all carry burdens that if they were lifted off of our shoulders, we would finally say, I'm happy, I'm free, getting us to our happy place. So what we often do is we turn to our if-onlys to relieve those burdens and things that we carry through life. We all have this innate sense that something or someone will fill our lives. We can finally be happy. Now, our culture tells us there are lots of different ways that we can find happiness and satisfaction in life. So what I want to do is just kind of double-click a little bit on that burden, heavy laden for us to say, what are the burdens and the heavy laden things that we look at from our own culture to say, these are things that we often turn to that we look inside and say, these are things that are burdensome to me. And I'll highlight a few. There's 4 of them I want to highlight. The first one is professional success. Our culture tells us that if you can finally be happy if you arrive professionally. If you get the right job in the right location with the right salary, you can finally have the house that you want with the lawn that you want, maybe, the TV that you want, eat the food that you want, have the family that you want, and then finally you will be satisfied in life. Friends, we live in an academic town. The center, the heart of Oxford, is training people to go be professional in their career. And so many of our students over here and here in the first service, all over the place, there's this burden that a lot of students carry around that they tell me about. It says we are burdened by having to graduate from Miami with a job already secure in life. And so the decision's being made. I can't go on a summer mission trip because I've got to have the right internship. I got to get it all lined up before I even graduate. in order to be able to be professionally successful in life. There's so much pressure, even in our own town, that we feel for professional success. But it's not just young people. If you're like me, you're midlife, going into my 40s, and maybe there's some of you that are older than that, around that time, all of us feel pressured professionally to say, my career is what will bring me satisfaction and happiness in life. As a pastor, I've had my fair share of trying to find satisfaction in my professional success. The celebrity pastors, how did they get there? How do I get there? It's, the burden of saying, if I need to succeed professionally in order to be happy in life. That's one way that our culture says it. You can find satisfaction professionally. Second way, romance, love. So maybe you don't have the right job and the right location, but at least you can get the right person in your life. And finally, if you are somebody to somebody else, you can be happy in life. And so in this reality here, our culture tells us that you can find satisfaction by wrapping your satisfaction around having somebody else in your life, a person to spend the rest of your life with. Graduate from Miami with the Miami merger. How many Miami mergers are there? You don't have to raise your hand. Oh, you can't be one. There's a few, right? That says, you gotta, if you don't have it professionally together, at least you can have your love life together, right? And graduate like that. Or, that's not you. Maybe it's saying, well, the grass must be greener on the other side. The person that God has given to my marriage just isn't doing it for me anymore. There must be someone else out there that's better. This is what we believe. My satisfaction wrapped up into my love life. If I'm not successful in my career, at least I can be successful in my love life. Third way, making a difference in the world. That's huge, isn't it? That's huge for a younger generation. It's huge for all of us. We all desire to make a difference in the world. We want to leave our mark, our dent in the universe. And so maybe we leave a smaller footprint and reduce, reuse, recycle more or something. Or whatever it may be. Say, I want to attach my life to some bigger cause, and if I can give my life to something bigger than myself, then at least I will be happy in life. So maybe my career stinks. I don't like what I do for my job. Maybe my love life stinks, but at least I can invest my time and energies, my talents in something that's bigger than myself, and I'll finally be happy. I'll make a difference in life. Those are three things that our culture tells us. It says, if you do these things, you can be happy in life. The fourth thing is really attached to the context in which Jesus actually says the statement, and it is, shockingly, religion. That's interesting, isn't it? Many people are trying desperately for that inner rest of the soul. And so they turn to practicing religion. Thinking that if I can just, do a bunch of good things, I can be a good moral person, be a good spiritual person, do all the right things, do all the good things, enough of those things, then I can finally be in favor with God and I'll be happy. At the core of religion says I can do a bunch of things to get right with God. And a lot of people turn to that. That's the context in which Jesus actually is making the statement, come to me, all who labor, all who are heavy burdened with religiosity. The only other place that Jesus uses these words in the Gospel of Matthew is later in Matthew chapter 23. In Matthew chapter 23, what Jesus is highlighting is the Pharisees have laid an extra burden of religiosity over the people, causing all of them to do all these extra things to have to make them do a bunch of things in order to get right with God. And so he's addressed them saying, you're heavy laden, you're burdened by religion. And these things are crushing you because when burdens are there, we feel like religion had to do a bunch of things. We're always asking, am I good enough? Have I done enough? Am I moral enough? Am I spiritual enough? What do I have to do to get right with God? And that is a burden. That is a laboring in life that Jesus is addressing here and saying, come to me. Everyone who labors and is burdened by religiosity, come to me and you will find rest. So maybe it's one of those four things in your life that you say, you know what, I'm kind of buying into this mentality that my satisfaction, my if only is related to my career, it is related to my love life, it is related to making a difference, it is related to my religion. It is a crushing weight, isn't it? Maybe there's something else in your life. But the reality is this, you and I can obtain all of those things, every single one of them, and yet still feel a deep, crushing unrest in our life. You know, when you're younger, you think once you get there, you'll have those things. And I'm told when you're older, you look back and actually you've already had all those things. They slip through your fingers, and it's like they weren't actually my place of satisfaction in life. Happiness can be artificial, can't it? One of life's biggest lies to us is that this thing or that thing will finally bring us happiness. And when it doesn't, we discover that life has been lying to us. One of the things I've been wrestling through this week is this statement about contentment, because I want contentment in my life. I bet you do as well. But this is what I've learned, is that contentment in life, and having it all together, according to the world, when I have it, I can still feel a sense for some sort of imperishable bliss in my life. Even in contentment, having it all, still feeling a need for some sort of imperishable bliss. This is a crushing weight that many of us carry through life. Every single one of us. All of us are trying to live up to some sort of standard that we have. Or someone else's standard that they've given to us. Let me just talk real briefly to our college students, because there's a lot of students in this town, as I've already referenced, and some of you are sitting here with us this morning. Some of you, and this may not be all of you, but some of you may have parents who sent you to Oxford, to MU, with extraordinary expectations that you feel the crushing weight of. Whether that's academically, whether that's career, whatever it may be, and you may intuitively feel those things, or you may not, but many of parents sending their kids to Miami saying, I expect certain things from you. I'm paying a lot for that education, right? It better produce something. And so when you get a B on an exam or a test, it can be crushing. So maybe that's you, maybe it's not you, but all of us have these expectations that I've got to live up to some sort of standard. Either it's put on me by somebody else, or it's internally. So it may not just be students, it's all of us though, right? Some of us are frustrated in our professional success. We say, I'm not there, or I'm making a change in my career might disappoint somebody in my life. So I want to quit. I want to quit my job. And by doing so, would know you would disappoint someone in your life. Reality is that deep in our soul, there is this unrest in our lives when we have attached our happiness to one of those four things or something else in our life that says, this is where my rest is, and we know it doesn't do it for us, and so we're heavy laden, we're burdened. Often when that happens in my life, and even this morning, I confess to you, that even this morning, we often have an inner murmur of self-incrimination. What I mean by that is this. You and I are constantly talking to ourselves. This internal dialogue, right? And so that weight of that burdens that we have in life to find our satisfaction in something else can actually turn into this inner self-incriminating murmur where we convict ourselves of something. So if someone else doesn't convict us of something that we're not measuring up to, we'll convict ourselves internally. Say, you're not good enough. You haven't done enough. You don't measure up. You're not worth it. Inner self-murmur incrimination. I wonder how many of us this morning have that inner self-incrimination. Talking to ourselves, convicting ourselves. This great quote by a guy named Ben Nugent in the New York Times. He wrote an article that says this. He said, the quality of my work is the measure of my worth. He's highlighting something that's deeply wrong with us, isn't it? When he says, the quality of my work is the measure of my worth. He's simply saying that when you and I become so pathologically focused on one thing, and that one thing has to be perfect in life, the quality of that work then becomes a measure of our worth. How many of us are walking around with that kind of self-mantra inside? Burdened, heavy laden by something. So Jesus' words in verse 28 come popping off the page, don't they? Come to me, all who labor, all who are heavy, burdened. Why? Because you will find rest, relief from all of those burdens. We all need rest. Well, what is it then? What actually is rest? That's the second question. What is rest? Look at verses 29 and 30. Jesus says this, come to me, all who labor. We love that invitation. Come, and then he says, verse 29, take my yoke upon you, learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and what? You will find rest for your souls. According to Jesus, it's very counterintuitive what he's saying. What he's saying is that rest, what rest is actually a yoke. Now you and I don't use the word yoke very often, except for, cracking open eggs. Did you get the yolk? I can tell you some yolks this morning. Are you going to go to New York? He's saying here, rest is a yoke. So we don't use this word often, but a yoke, if you're familiar with animals, and I know some of you maybe come from that background or have that background, so a yoke essentially is a cross piece of wood that's placed across the neck of two animals. And then those two animals are then attached to a cart or a plow of some kind. And the animals then work together to do the work. Okay, so that's what a yoke is. So Jesus says here, take my yoke upon you. So he's essentially saying this. If you want to be liberated, you want to be freed from the things that are burdening you, weighing you down, you want rest, well, you've got to come to Jesus and attach your life to Him. Find your significance, your value, your worth in Him. The relief and the burdens and the things that we feel in life are come by yoking ourselves to Jesus. All those things I mentioned before about our restlessness, those are burdens that we carry through life. They dominate us, don't they? They can be crushing to us. And Jesus is saying here, if you will yoke yourself to Him and let Him dominate you, let Him rule you, then you will finally be freed from those burdens you carry through life. So the only place to find rest is by attaching our lives to Him. Now it seems very counterintuitive, doesn't it? It's only counterintuitive because our culture tells us, you want freedom? Be your own boss. You want freedom? Determine your own future. You want freedom? Sovereign, self-sovereign. Just lead your own life. And Jesus is saying something totally counterculture. He's saying, if you want to be freed from the burdens and the things that you carry through life, you need to attach yourself to Him. Let Him rule you. Let Him help you through life. See, the reality is all of us are yoked to something. And it is that whatever you're living for in life is what you are yoked to. And Jesus is simply saying, if you want to be free, yoke yourself to Him. That deep inner rest of the soul that we all long for comes from allowing Jesus to rule our lives. The impact of that is far-reaching, isn't it? It's extraordinary. Because now when we are yoked to Jesus, I no longer have to prove myself to you, to anybody else in life. I no longer have to be self-critical. I no longer have to criticize you. You no longer have to criticize me. My attachments in life are to Jesus. I'm yoked to Him. And therefore, whether I succeed in my career or don't, whether you get that A or B in your exam or don't, whatever it is, your happiness is not attached to some sort of standard out there because your happiness is now yoked to Jesus. You're attached to Him, and all those burdens then can be lifted off of your shoulders. So you can enjoy your relationships without expecting them to provide for that inner rest. My wife doesn't have to be the one where my source of happiness is wrapped into. My children don't have to be my source of happiness. My friends don't have to be my source of happiness. The same is true for you. That when Jesus is the one that you are yoked to, the burden for happiness is no longer according to what the world says, but according to Jesus. And He says, my burden is light. His yoke is easy. And so there's just this release that says, I no longer need to look to those things to be my if only. Jesus is my if only. He's the one that I run to. The quality of our work is nothing anymore. Because we're wrapped into our quality of who we are according to Jesus, how He sees us. So you might say, that's great, Pastor. Well, how do I get it? I want what you're talking about. That's the last point I want to make this morning, is how do we get this rest? Look up at verse 25. Jesus says this in context. Verses 20 and 29 come from this statement He's made before. So look at verse 25. It says, at that time Jesus declared, He's praying, He says this, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. So the wise and the learned, which Jesus references here, they're going to miss out on this rest because, According to the wise and learned of this world, they're looking, and sometimes us as well, we're looking for satisfaction in things according to the world. But Jesus says, you've revealed these things to little children. So how we get this rest is we become like a child. It's not childish, immature. It is childlike. So how we take that yoke, when Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, it means for us to become like a child. Now, if you have children, or you have grandchildren, all of us are children at some point, then we know what children are like, right? When our children are born, they're helpless. They can't do anything for themselves. They're constantly looking for their parents to provide everything for them. They say, I can't do anything. I can't eat. I can't change myself. I can't do anything in life. I'm just extraordinarily helpless. And so for us to be like a child means that we recognize our helplessness. Recognize that we're spiritually, morally helpless. We need that rest, but we can't get it on our own. We want it so badly. But Jesus says, in order to get it, you've got to become like a child. You become helpless. Allow Him to carry us. So we recognize that we are morally and spiritually without anything, bankrupt, so to speak, coming to Him and saying, I can't do anything, I need you. The second thing we know about our children is that they're confident they are loved. My children know that no matter what, no matter how much they mess up in life, it will always be my child. And so you know that if you have children as well, that no matter how much your children go off the wrong path or do something that they're not supposed to be doing, they're always your children. They're always loved. And so for us to be childlike and take that yoke upon us that Jesus is saying is for us to understand that we can be confident in God's love for us. That although, yes, we are learning and growing in the process of following Him, we can be confident in His love for us. We'll never be shunned by God. We'll never be shunned because we know that Jesus, as we've been singing this morning, took the weight and the burden of our sin upon His shoulders, which separates from our Father, and now we can run to Him and know that we can be confidently loved. And so how you get this rest is like a child comes running to the arms of his Father for help, for acceptance, for love. Let me encourage you with a couple things. First is this. Don't come halfway. There are a lot of people in life who see this invitation from Jesus and say, yeah, I want that. But they only come halfway. Which means this, that some people know that they are helpless, but think that their helplessness means that God doesn't love them. Some people walking through life think, I've just done so many bad things. I've done so many terrible things in life that I can never actually be loved by God. There are other people who say they're so confident they're loved by God that they think that they can carry themselves. And so they come halfway. Jesus' invitation here, for those who are burdened and heavy laden, He says, come, which means come all the way. Don't just come halfway. To find the rest that your soul needs, you've got to go all the way, running to the Father's arms. Rest is not something that we can earn, but something that's given to us when we come running to Him. That chase, that search that we're all on in life, to fill our lives with that if only, leads us to Jesus. And so the big idea I want you to take away this morning is this, that Jesus gives you the inner rest that you're searching for. All that we're looking for, all those if onlys, that sense of happiness and joy and satisfaction in life can never come from any of the things that we look to. There's only Jesus. Run to Him this morning. Don't come halfway. Come all the way. That's pretty good. That's a good reminder for us this morning that the burdens that we carry through life, whether it is the burdens of trying to prove ourselves to somebody else, the burdens of our sin and our shortcomings, and this famous invitation that Jesus says to come to Him and He'll give rest. And so, Lord, if there's some here this morning that are heavy burdened, they're laboring through life, trying desperately to fill their life with something that will satisfy them, I pray that these words would be a healing balm to their soul. That they would come to You and find the rest that they need in You and You alone. In Jesus' name.